following interview was done with Gaynor Baker, who is from England and currently lives in the United States. We began by discussing the population of England. She did not know the population of England, but after further research we decided that it was 51,456,400 as of 2008. I asked her if the population was diverse, and she said that given that England is part of Europe, it is definitely a multicultural population with people coming from many countries within the European continent. It also has a large Indian and Pakistani community, which is changing the population from all perspectives, religion, jobs, schools, language, etc. She said that the primary language bit is English, but since it is a melting pot for other countries, you do hear a lot of different languages. Because of the high Indian, Pakistani population, Hindu and Urdu are becoming more common. We then began to discuss currency and how expensive or cheaper things were compared to the United States. She said that England uses the Great British Pound, or the GBP, and that they did not switch to the euro like the rest of Europe. And compared to the dollar, the exchange rate is about $1.50 to the Great British Pound. I asked her if things were more expensive or cheaper, and she said England is definitely more expensive than the United States. She's noticed that for whatever we pay in dollars here is around what we pay in pounds, but there's a conversion rate of about $1.50 to £1. So say you buy a bottle of Coke and pay $1.50 here, it would cost about £1.50 in England, making it about $2.25 more, and it doesn't take long for those differences to add up. They do not have to pay for healthcare insurance costs though, which can take a big chunk out of the United States salary. We then began to discuss the government in England and how it differs from that of the United States. She told me that she was not into politics and does not like to discuss them, but the one thing she could say is that the Queen is the head of the country and has to sign off on any legislation that the Prime Minister puts forward. The government is just like the U.S. It is split into two, which is the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And there are three main parties that are the Labour, the Conservative, and the Liberal Democrats. We then began to discuss the school systems in England, and she said that most are state-run and that there are some private schools for the upper echelon and those that have the money to do so. Many of the private schools are boarding schools. And she said that schooling in England generally starts much earlier than in the United States. They have a nursery, infants, juniors, and then senior school. Nursery starts at 3 1/2 and high school ends at 16. Students that wish to go to university stay at high school until they're 18. We then I then asked her about the different religions in England, and she said that the main religion is the Church of England, of which the Queen is the head. There is also Catholicism, Methodist, Baptist, and a myriad of others, including Muslim. Jobs is the next topic that we discussed. She said jobs are similar to the U.S. and what is available. There are, however, more opportunities in the United States merely because of the size of the country. I asked her if they require a college degree or any other degree, and she said having a degree isn't necessarily a prerequisite, but just like anywhere else, it depends on the job that someone is applying for. There are community colleges the same as in the U.S., and there are colleges specific to the type of work sought, cooking, engineering, and such. There are 2-year courses available too, which are similar to associate degrees. These are usually obtained in the 2 years after high school, the ages 16 to 18. Jobs compared to those in the United States are stressful in both countries, but however, workplace in the U.S. are more relaxed with regards to dress, environment, etc. She was amazed when she first moved here that her co-workers had radios on their desk, now more iPods than radios, but that it would be a big no-no in England. We then began to discuss the average income. She said she didn't really have numbers, but salaries are definitely higher in the United States than they are in England. She has a friend who is still over there and is a fully certified credit controller and earns the equivalent of approximately $30,000. She does not have a degree, nor does she have any qualifications to her specific job other than experience, but her salary is significantly higher than hers. I asked her what the average income for a family was like, and she said it would depend on how many earners were in the family. She said the government does, however, provide child credit, which is a specific amount for each child and is not means tested, so no matter how much you earn, you would receive this credit. It is, however, tiered, and they don't get the same amount for each child. It gets a little less for each subsequent child. We then began to discuss homes, and she said that since England is part of the British Isles land, is limited, so the majority of the population live in houses that are much smaller than in the United States, although their cost is much higher. She said that in America, she lives in a standard bi-level home with 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage, basement, largest yard, and paid $115,000 for it. Her house back in England had 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and bathroom, no yard, no garage, and those kind of homes are currently selling for around $150,000. Asked her what the living was like. Was there neighborhoods? The country? Was there high-rises? And she said there are definitely neighborhoods that are known as housing estates. Because land is so limited, there are a lot of semi-detached homes, which are duplexes, and terraced housing, which are called row houses. Many more people in England rent houses from the government, but not HUD housing, and it's definitely not perceived that way. Some of the government housing is larger than what she was able to buy. Most of the high-rise buildings are government-owned or housing association owned. Very few people would buy a high-rise flat, which is an apartment. Asked her how clothing style differed from that in the United States, and she said clothing is very similar, that much really wasn't different. But she said for work, when she was working there, she was not allowed to wear pants, and whenever she came to America, she thought it was different that people wore pants, because until she came here, she never even owned a pair of pants. Asked her how they dressed for casual pleasure, and she said because of the climate, you rarely see people in shorts unless it's a really hot day, like 70 degrees. If women are going out on a date or socialize in general, they definitely dress to impress and make an effort. It's dresses and heels for the most part. She would never have dreamed of going on a date in jeans and a t-shirt. It took some getting used to dressing down. We then began to discuss the different foods and if anything was specifically native to England. And she said that the perception is that English food is bland, but having lived in both countries, there isn't a whole lot of difference between the two. Visitors to the U.S. only encounter restaurants, not good old home cooking. Restaurants, unless high-end, are pretty much the same from one to another. Steak is expensive in England, but they eat much more lamb and pork. A lot of U.S. visitors and U.S. residents won't touch lamb, so it limits what they choose of restaurant menus anyway. Since food is regional, just like it is in the U.S., there are many different things that are native, such as Yorkshire pudding, toad in the hole, black pudding, clotted cream, and steak puddings. She said asking this question made her hungry. I then began to ask if England was a tourist destination, and she said England is definitely a great tourist destination. It has hundreds and hundreds of years of history, unlike the United States. Asked her what are some major places and sites to visit and see, and she said there are a lot of places that are high on the tourist map for visitors, such as Stonehenge, Chester, York, Bath, but there are many more beautiful places that are their hidden gems. You have to ask a Brit to find out about them. One of her favorite places would be the Lake District. Hundreds of lakes, valleys, countryside, very scenic. Then you have Blackpool, England's equivalent to Las Vegas. But she said if you asked 100 foreign visitors to England, that probably 99 of them would have never heard of it. Asked her what people do for entertainment and fun. She said pubs are the most frequent places. They are within walking distance of homes, and it is colloquially known as going down the local. We have the same things as here in the United States, bowling, movie theaters, etc., but the English do not go out to eat anywhere near as regular as in the States. There are not as many fast food places, maybe 1 or 2 in each town, and steak restaurants are very expensive. Dining out is usually the Chinese or Indian places, no Mexican. I asked her how people traveled from place to place, and she said public transport is much more commonplace and frequent in England, so many people use buses and trains. She used to commute daily the 8-mile journey by train. Not as many people have cars as in the U.S., and as there is less of a need and is more of a luxury. She did not get her driver's license until she was in her late 20s. The final question that I asked was how does she view international relationships between the U.S. and other countries in the world. And she said England has a great relationship with the United States, it being one of their biggest allies. It has good relations with most countries in the world despite it being so small. Being allies of the United States, they do seem to align together in which countries they do or do not do well with. In closing, she said that since Europe is so close, many people are very well traveled. From England, you can fly 2.5 hours and be pretty much anywhere in Europe. Fly 2.5 hours from Kentucky and you're only in Texas.